The Law Matters to You, a lecture series built to inform and educate. The Department of Communication, in collaboration with the University of St. Martin, invites you to our first in a series of lectures entitled The Law Matters to You. Join us at USM, 7 p.m. Tuesday, March 29th, and hear keynote speaker Judge Moritz de Kort cover the topic, The Court and Legal System of St. Martin. The Law Matters to You, a lecture series built to inform and educate.
First of all, let me start by extending our deep sympathy and condolences to the government of Belgium and the people of Belgium on behalf of the people of St. Martin for that horrific terrorist attack that took place in Belgium yesterday. Killing and maiming innocent men, women, and children while they go about their daily affairs is a despicable act. We would like to extend our praise and the wishes that the Belgian people display fortitude and keep the hope to overcome this incident. The Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mr. Mark Rutte, has sent out a notice to the entire kingdom requesting that we lower the flags half-mast in recognition or in expressing our sympathy with this terrorist act in Belgium, and tomorrow St. Martin will lower all flags half-mast in this connection. I think that today everybody in St. Martin have a little spring in their step. They're walking a little taller, and their chest is a little more protruded than usual because St. Martin has turned the corner with the budget that has been approved by Parliament last week. Yes, there's reason to be proud because with this we have set the foundation going forward that will create jobs, create investments, and not only for this year, but multi-annually has set the stage to get out of the criticism that we've been hearing for years about St. Martin. And more particularly, I think the pride comes from the fact that we have shown and proven that we can do. And we can do, and that people compliment us when we do. And we intend to continue doing and to surprise them more going forward. We have turned the corner, but there are many more corners that we have to turn, and we are going to work to be able to turn those corners. This next week, we will be having, hosted by the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin, a conference, first of its kind, on St. Martin regarding financial development of small island countries. We will be having some speakers hailing from Jamaica, from the Central Bank of the Eastern Caribbean, from CARTAC, from SEMLA, and from the University of Tilburg, as well as the University of the West Indies. It is an occasion, again, showing a step up, because these kind of things we didn't have before, in order to spread and educate and get information so that we could set the stage, a sound stage for financial development going forward. The conference is going to be held on the 30th and the 31st. I'm sorry, on the 31st and the 1st of April. It's going to be at the Maho facilities. The public, there'll be also be an open session for the public on April 1st from 1:30 to 3 p.m., from 1:30 to 3 p.m., in which the central bank will give a whole outline of their responsibility, their tasks, and how they go about them during this conference. The Prime Minister is not here today because he is in Aruba attending the UN conference on greenery, and therefore I have taken his place today. Friday is Good Friday. The Easter season is upon us, and let me take this opportunity to extend all my best wishes to everyone in celebration of the Easter holidays. Celebrate, but be safe. Thank you.
I'd like to echo the words of Minister Gibson, wishing all of the residents and visitors a happy Easter. The Ministry of VSA, we are planning on working on, we are in the process actually, of working on a plan to improve compliance in the labor market. It is commonly agreed upon by many that there's a large population of people working here without the proper employment permits. And I understand very well that this is a situation that has evolved, has historic roots and has evolved over a period of time. But the fact is that there's really too many consequences for the country, for the economy of the island, for this to continue in the manner that it has. Certainly the government loses tax revenues as you have businesses and employees that are not compliant. Having people living on the island without proper health insurance creates burdens for the entire healthcare network. And obviously non-compliance with labor regulations is an issue for the workers. We understand that improving compliance is a process. As I mentioned, this is something that has evolved over many years, and I think that you certainly could say that government has had responsibility in allowing it to get to the state that it is. Employers and employees that have also had a responsibility, and I'm not saying that it's all done with bad intentions, but certainly it is a problem that has been created from multiple angles. And so I think that when we're looking at how we're going to improve compliance, I think it's important that we stress that we will take a balanced and a measured and a fair approach towards improving compliance. And that begins, there's an educational process to that. So that means that we need to be more clear in terms of defining what your obligations are, what the responsibilities are, what rules we're expecting you to comply with. And I think it also means that we need to make sure that compliance with the law is the path of least resistance. You know, my experience over the years has shown that sometimes government has a tendency to make complying with the law almost impossible, or very complicated, or expensive, or too bureaucratic. And so I think one of the roles of government is to make sure that complying with the law should be easy, right? So that's something we definitely need to work on. But as we look at improving compliance, I think that we need to look at the disciplinary measures that the inspectorate has at hand, as its resources. And when I look at the situation currently, as I try and understand how the ministry works in terms of compliance, at the moment we really have just two options. Either just issue a warning, basically a slap on the wrist, or the other possibility is what they call a PV, or a procès verbal, which is an official report that is filed with the public prosecutor's office. As a hands-on minister, really liking to understand the nitty-gritty and everything that the ministry does and how and why things are done in a particular way, members of the cabinet and myself met with the prosecutors this week with the prosecutor's office in order to try and understand exactly how this PV process works. Fact is, the ministry last year, 2015, handed out just a handful of PVs, and how they actually concluded in the end, I'm not even clear. But as I understand the process, it means that the ministry has to make a detailed report. The report has to be very clearly documenting what the issues are, and that takes time. And then the public prosecutors will evaluate that PV to decide if it's got merits for the prosecutor's office to follow through with it. And then they are the ones who will decide what level the fines would be. And it's also important to understand that once it involves the prosecutor's office, this becomes a criminal process. And it becomes a process that once initiated by VSA cannot be stopped or turned back or interfered with in any way. I'm not saying that we should, but I'm simply saying that once it's turned over to the prosecutors, it lives a life of its own. You don't know necessarily how long it will take to actually implement. So one of the things that government is working on legislatively is the implementation of what they call administrative fines. And this would give the ministry a set of tools that they could use to, without going through the prosecutor's office, to levy financial fines as a means of improving compliance. But this is a legislative process, and as we know, government regulating legislation takes time. So as we look at the processes, or the tools that are currently available, the PV process has its issues. The warning process is, in my mind, really just a slap on the wrist. So we need to work on developing, let's call them sort of middle range measures that can be used to improve compliance. And also measures that can be handed out or enforced without so much of the bureaucracy. And so one of the things we're working on now is a structured agreement with SZV, so that the Labor Inspectorate would go out together with SZV Inspectorate. They have different authorities, they have different measures that they can use, and the labor inspectors have different authorities and different measures they can use. So what we're examining is the possibility that instead of two labor inspectors going out to a particular entity, that instead we will split and have one labor inspector and one inspectorate from SZV, so they're complementary, they can share resources to a certain degree, and because they have complementary roles and responsibilities and authorities, I believe that this is actually a good way to have intermediate disciplinary measures. And just to give an example of the urgency or the need for improving compliance, and as I said, it needs to be a balanced, measured, fair process. But for example, recently the inspectorate, they went out to a business that had no business license. They were operational, had no crib number. They had 15 employees, of which 11 were not properly documented to work. It's clear that in our community, we simply cannot afford for this to continue to happen. The fact is, if they don't have a crib number, it's not even possible for them to pay any taxes. So the ministry is taking this issue very seriously. I have a number of recommendations for employers and for employees, and that's number one is get educated, make sure you understand what your rights, what your obligations are, what your roles and what your responsibilities are. Make sure, I mean, it's important that everybody has health insurance. I'm in the process of working with a private insurance company to see if they can offer an attractive package for independent workers, so like bus drivers, taxi drivers, vendors, so people who sort of fall through the cracks, working on putting together an attractive package for them to go through private insurance while we're in the process of looking at how we're going to reform our healthcare system in general and our health insurance policies. The other thing is, so from my perspective, there's no reason that people should be here on the island without health insurance. I think it's a critical part. And it's also a part of our country managing our financial resources, because when an emergency happens and somebody needs to be evacuated out for medical emergencies, even if they're undocumented or uninsured, the government has a responsibility to take care of the people that are here, and therefore incurs the financial costs of that medical evacuation as well as the medical treatment. However, going forward, these medical evacuations, I believe, should trigger an investigation from the Ministry of VSA as well as the inspectors from SZV. So in other words, whenever there's a medical evacuation for an uninsured person, that will trigger a reaction from government. That means we will now investigate the circumstances to see should the person have been properly insured. And if, for example, we find that that person is working in a business and should have had health insurance and did not, we will hold the business financially liable for the medical costs incurred to the country. So, my recommendation is make sure that you get health insurance for the people that are working here. And one of the interesting points is that with SZV, interesting, their policy is registering with SZV does not mean that you must be, they don't question your legal status. So irrespective of your legal status, you are actually obliged to register. If you fall within the criteria, you are actually obliged to participate with SZV. So I do understand that government is bureaucratic and sometimes cumbersome, and as I said, I understand that the situation that the country's in is a process that has evolved over many years. So my request as well is, in particular to businesses, if you are having a problem with being compliant, if you're having issues, be proactive, come to government, you can come to the appropriate ministry. You're also welcome to come to VSA. So for example, the business that was inspected, I understand there may be issues with how the timeliness of how the license was issued and the fact that you have costs that need to be incurred to open the business, and so how do I make an investment in rent and equipment, but then I can't open, so that means I have a period of time that I've made an investment for and can't operate. So I understand there's some practical challenges, and that's what government's role is, to work together with the community to try and figure out how do we streamline our legislation and our processes to make sure that it works. Again, compliance with the law has to be the path of least resistance. If we make it too difficult for people to comply, these are the kinds of things that happen. So my recommendation is, if you have issues with compliance and you're really interested in complying, come to see the government, come to see the ministry. I can't say that I'm going to fix every particular issue, but certainly from a policy perspective, we can at least look at it and see how we can regulate it.
The Department of Communication, in collaboration with the University of St. Martin, invites you to our first in a series of lectures entitled The Law Matters to You. Join us at USM, 7 p.m. Tuesday, March 29th, and hear keynote speaker Judge Moritz de Kort cover the topic, The Court and Legal System of St. Martin, The Law Matters to You, a lecture series built to inform and educate.
I want to address a couple issues this morning. In the last press briefing I attended, some questions was raised pertaining to the awarding of the new garbage contracts 2016 till 2021. I had indicated then that the final advice for the awarding of the contracts, I did not receive them as yet. Since that period, I received the final advice for the commissioning of the works for the collection of the solid waste. It's been received and will be decided on by the Council of Ministers. I want to indicate that the previous contract now is for 4 parcels. The Dutch side of the island was divided in 4 parcels. With the new contract, we decided to divide the island in 8 parcels, 8 districts, namely Parcel 1, the Phillipsburg area, Parcel 2, Point Blanche, Sucker Garden, Pond Island, and Madame Estate area, Parcel 3, Mount William, Middle Region, Defiance, Oyster Pond, and Don Beach, Parcel 4, Dutch Quarter and the Belvedere area, Parcel 5, Fort William, Bush Road, Sakers Gut, Corralita Road, Mary's Fancy, the intersection L.B. Scott Road, Gladiola Road, towards Cahill and A.G.C. Browers Road, and towards Cold Bay. Parcel 6, intersection L.B. Scott Road, Gladiola Road, towards South Ward, St. John's, and so forth. Parcel 7, Cold Bay Hill, Indigo Bay, Cold Bay, Cape Bay, Pelican area, towards Simpson Bay, and Parcel 8, Simpson Bay, Beacon Hill, Kupokoy. So we decided to divide the island in 8 parcels. Number 1, that is more manageable for the department to make sure that the contractors are living up to their obligations as it pertains to the contracts. And number 2, to create more opportunities for other contractors. As is known, the tender works was held on February 3rd. We saw the participation of 19 contractors who submitted a bid. Unfortunately, 10 of the 19 contractors that submitted a bid, their bid was disqualified because the bids was not in accordance with the terms of reference. 9 contractors that submitted a bid that were in accordance to the terms of reference. 5 companies submitted the most competitive bids. The new contracts, which is for the duration of 5 years, amounts to a total of 32,736,093 guilders. On a yearly basis, that amounts to 6.547218 million guilders. So 6,547,218 guilders on an annual basis. So the contracts, the decision will be made tomorrow by the Council of Ministers, and a letter of comfort will be given to the prospective contractors that they could start their process for the 1st of April. That was one issue. The second issue is related to the wastewater management, so the new sewage system in the Cold Bay area, the joint project together with the French side of the island. I've been hearing a lot of complaints concerning the proposed solution to create an island in the lagoon to facilitate the sewage system, the sewage plant. I want it to be known, and the Prime Minister alluded to that a little when he indicated that our current sewage system is in the fresh pond, which was filled. The landfill where the waste to energy is proposed is also on landfill in Great Salt Pond. And from my time taking office, we've been looking for a suitable solution, a suitable location for the sewage system, sewage plant. The proposal from the previous government with the land exchange with Tessie Portable Sons, that was reversed. One of the issues is there is funds available from the European Union for a joint project. in the tune of 3 million euros for the realization of the sewage plant, and an additional 3 million euros for the cleaning of the lagoon. So that's 6 million euros in total for that project. One of the conditions are with the sewage plant, a radius around the sewage plant of 100 meters, no residential buildings are allowed. And if you see the proposed location with from the previous government, the land that Port La Besante was providing, it's in a densely populated residential area. So automatically, we would have been disqualified for the funds, the 3 million euros for that. The technical experts indicated that the best location technically is behind the Tropicana Casino. That area also would fall outside of the requirement of not having residential buildings within 100 meters radius of the sewage plant. So we've been looking at alternative measures. There was discussions with Mr. Constant Fleming on him donating land. That land was located on the French side. Again, one of the qualifications for the 3 million euro is it have to be on the Dutch side. And politically, there was little appetite from our French counterparts for having it at the location that Mr. Louis Constant Fleming proposed. So we've been looking at different alternatives. So the indication that government is filling the lagoon and it is irresponsible, it's one of the best locations, and all of the complaints we've been having, not one came with an alternative proposal, alternative solution. If those who are saying that it is a irresponsible move from government, if they have a alternative solution, I'm all open ears. I'm willing to listen and look at all the other alternatives. But we have a situation where daily raw sewage is being pumped or discharged in the lagoon. It's a health hazard. It's a situation that needs to be addressed. And I'm looking for the best possible solution to tackle this issue. We're getting, as I mentioned, the tune of 6 million euro to assist us in that process, and at the same time, clean the lagoon. So, once again, my issue is it's not about filling the lagoon, it's about looking what is in the best interest of the country, what is in the best interest of the citizens of St. Martin.